Grand Duke Dmitri Pavlovich was a tuberculosis patient at Sanatorium Schatzalp in Davos, Switzerland, from 1939 to 1942. Stranded in Persia after the Bolshevik Revolution, Dmitri would spend the next 9 months at the British legation in Tehran, grasping at every bit of news that trickled in from Russia. He fought anxiety and depression by reading self-help books and works on New Thought philosophy, yoga, and esoteric spiritual traditions. The British government, convinced that he might become the next Tsar of Russia, granted him a military commission, and he made his way to England dressed in the uniform of a captain in the British Army. His circuitous route back to Europe took him through Iraq, India, and Egypt. Arriving in France, he was asked to leave the country within 24 hours. In London, the Foreign Office sent an official to ask him to depart for Malta, but he refused to leave. So began his life as one of millions of stateless Russian political exiles spread out all over the world. In England, he was welcomed by society, but treated coldly by the king and queen. The prevailing view of Russia as a country that had betrayed its allies wounded him deeply and would remain a source of bitterness for the remainder of his life, something he shared with his fellow émigrés. While the Russian Civil War raged with Tsarist and Republican forces fighting the Red Army, Dmitri was more than ever viewed as the likely future head of a revived monarchy. A succession of important Russian generals and ministers visited his apartment in Paris, and he was carefully scrutinized by various French, British, and American intelligence operatives, among them Sidney Riley, the prototype of the fictional James Bond. He even founded his own small intelligence gathering group, the Information Bureau, and consulted with thought leaders on both the right and left sides of the political spectrum, including socialist intellectuals Paul Milyukov and Professor Hugh Dalton at the London School of Economics. But in 1921, after appearing triumphantly at a monarchist conference in Berlin, he was torn apart by the Russian émigré press in England and France. That experience plunged him so deeply into depression that an old pre-war acquaintance, Coco Chanel, felt compelled to come to the rescue. The two of them drove to the south of France in her brand new Rolls-Royce and became devoted lovers. Dmitri is credited with having chosen the scent for the famous Chanel No. 5 perfume and inspiring her Russian line. The affair lasted about a year, and when it ended, Dmitri struggled to find a place for himself. Left without an income, he accepted a job as a champagne salesman in France. Then, in 1926, his fortunes changed spectacularly. He courted and married American heiress Audrey Emery. The two of them bought a French chateau and moved in the most glamorous social circles, making regular appearances in Monte Carlo, Saint Moritz, London, Paris, and Palm Beach. His lifelong dream of having a family of his own finally seemed to come true when his son, Prince Paul Ilyinsky, was born in 1928. In the 1930s, Dmitri revived his political activism, taking on a leadership role within the Young Russia Party, a group dedicated to creating a socialist monarchy in Russia. Alexander Kazym-Bek, the founder and head of the party, was a suspected Soviet agent. Dmitri traveled throughout France, making speeches for the party and extolling the achievements of Soviet Russia. His life took a downturn when in 1935, Audrey fell in love with another man and asked for a divorce. Left in a precarious financial situation and with his son away at boarding school in England, Dmitri drifted. Friends who visited him at the empty chateau were expected to lend a hand with his model railroad layout and keep him company into the wee hours of the morning while he battled insomnia. By 1939, his health had begun to fail. The chateau had been sold, and Dmitri, now forced to live in hotels, was disillusioned with the party. His sister and ex-wife both moved to the United States and urged him to follow suit, but he refused to leave Europe or relinquish custody of his son, who remained in England. His illness took a sharp turn for the worse, and as German troops crossed the border into Poland, Dmitri checked into Sanatorium Schatzalp in Davos, Switzerland. His life hung by a thread.